from Drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. So this study that I'm going to show you today, it is a preprint. It is a small study. It is not peer reviewed yet. It is from Oxford University. When I saw the study first, I actually became scared for what it was saying. And then I looked at a bunch of other parts of the study, and I think we still need to wait for some more data. So let's start our discussion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the data from um, so this is Drbeen.com, and here are the some of the references. So this is UK's data, our world in um, our world in data, and this is UK's numbers. Of course, they are rising, and here are the number of deaths in the UK. And again, at this time, as they say that there is one death possibly with COVID. I have to yet figure out more data. Texas had shared that data with me, but I haven't found yet the cause of death. Was it COVID or something else? And the patient also had COVID positive. So this is the number of deaths, not changed yet. And that may be because UK is in the early part of the Omicron. This is South Africa. And if you see here, their current number of cases have, of course, surpassed even the previous waves. However, their death rate, this is the 7 days moving average, is still down. It moved up a tiny bit here. So 24 compared to 19, 20, 23. So we'll see in the coming days, but this Omicron was discovered in or was reported by South Africa on 24th of November. I believe that it was there at least a week before, or it should be there more. So we are in the third week, I think even more than that. And here is the data. And so we need to see more data yet. This is the study. This study is from, so if you see here, reduced neutralization of SARS-CoV-2 Omicron variant by post-immunization serum. And so we'll see that study, what they're saying. But generally, the authors are saying that they saw the neutralization activity of the neutralizing antibodies from some patients who were vaccinated, patients or persons who were vaccinated, and their serum had the antibodies against previous, of course, you know that against the previous ancestral variant, and they use those antibodies on Omicron to see if they can neutralize the Omicron or not. And they said that in some cases, the patients did not develop any neutralization, zero neutralization. So I would call that a SARS-CoV-3 if that was happening everywhere. However, in other cases, the neutralization was present but substantially low. This is what they're saying. But within their study, you would see that there are certain statements that are not in sync with each other. So let's look at that. This is their PDF, and I'm going to open up their PDF. Here is the PDF. So reduced neutralization of SARS-CoV-2 Omicron affiliations, Wellcome Center for Human Genetics, Nuffield Department of Medicine, University of Oxford, Oxford, UK. And I'm going to go over this discussion. So let's look at my demonstration of it or my illustrations of it, and then we can look at the studies as well. What I have done today is for folks who would like to know where this information is coming from. In some areas where the information is important, I have put the page numbers too. So here is the study. It is a preprint. It is not peer reviewed yet. It is done on for live neutralization. That means you take the serum. Let's say if I had a vaccine, you take my serum and make sure that there are antibodies and make sure there are no antibodies against nuclear capsid. And I've done this discussion before. The vaccines make antibodies against the spike protein, but the infection with the virus generates antibodies not only against the spike proteins, but also against other parts of the virus. And one important part is nucleocapsid protein. So if I do not have nucleocapsid antibodies, that means I was not previously infected. So they made sure that they take those serums that were nucleocapsid negative. That means these antibodies were only generated by the vaccines. And then they said that they were, again, it's a small study. AstraZeneca, Oxford, so Oxford's own vaccine with AstraZeneca's partnership, 22 samples, and BioNTech, 21 samples. And I want to address before I continue, there are some folks who feel that we should not be talking about Omicron and its related efficacies, reduction in efficacy or increase in efficacy or less severity or more severity because we don't have enough data. And I understand that. But as you can see, this is how information evolves. So we'll continue to build on it. This is Oxford, and they are reporting on something which I think they have contradiction within their own study. So this is just how it is. If you are someone who do not want to hear intermediate evolutionary steps, you can skip these. But this is important to know on day-to-day basis to see how this is how this situation is evolving. So, anyways, AstraZeneca 22, BioNTech 21. Then they say keep in mind that on the spike protein, there are a few areas that are good targets for antibodies. One target is the N-terminal domain, and that is a super antigenic area and super antibody area as well. So super vaccine area too. And secondly, the receptor binding domain has a part that is in front of it that binds with the ACE2. This domain, this is called the receptor binding motif, and I've talked about it many times before. So this is a 25 amino acid long part of the receptor binding domain, which binds with the ACE2. And authors say that there are many, many mutations on this one, which would help this virus bind more efficiently with ACE2, and that would increase its transmission. However, it would also help it escape the neutralization. Although the concept of transmissibility increase is not just based on the mutations in receptor binding domain, there are other methods as well. But anyways, for this study, this is what authors point of view is. So I'm going to stay within the confines of the study here. Now what they did was they took the serum of the people. So let's say they had someone who had first dose, and then 8 to 11 weeks later, second dose. I think mean was 9 weeks. You know that in UK there is a longer distance between the two doses. Then after the second dose, they waited for 4 weeks, which I think is great, because by fourth week we should be sure that proper immune system ramping up has occurred, proper number of antibodies are being produced, and the immune system is in proper gear. So they waited for 4 weeks, then they obtained the samples from the patients. So one cannot say that, hey, maybe the immune system was in a ramped down state or resting state, or maybe the sample was taken so early from the second dose that immune system was not yet sufficiently started. So this is a good time. So I like that part. Now what they did was they took those samples, so 43 in total, 22 from one vaccine group and the 21 from another vaccine group. They took them and they put viruses in those samples. So which viruses they put in those samples? Victoria, Beta, Delta, and Omicron. Victoria, I believe, from Australia. Beta was from UK, I believe, right? And Delta was from discovered in India, and Omicron from reported discovered South Africa. I don't think it is the country of origin, but I don't know. So they took these 4 variants and they neutralized them with these serum to see, and they observed what happens. And what they found was, this is the interesting part, and again, I have the page numbers here so that if you are wondering that, hey, where did Mubin get the statement? My phraseology may be wrong, but I'm going to try to be as aligned with what authors are saying as possible. So they said for AstraZeneca, that is the Oxford AstraZeneca adenovirus-based vaccine, they said with Omicron, the neutralization titers below detectable. So almost no neutralization. With BioNTech, so that is Pfizer, in the Victoria variant, The neutralization titers were up to 1609, or with the Victorian variant, the neutralization titers went up to 1609 of antibodies. And with Omicron, only 54, there was 29.8 times decline in neutralization titers. So they have a bunch of conclusions there, and I'll go over there. However, I want to make a comment. This is Mubin's comment now, and could be totally wrong. So my comments can be wrong, but I want to add my thought in here as well, just like you would add your thoughts too. My thought is, if this is a variant that has escaped vaccines and escaped previous infections, then it is not SARS-CoV-2 anymore, it is SARS-CoV-3. This is a different matter, that it is mild, it is not causing deaths so far, or not with that much of lethality. But if we declared that this has escaped all kind of protection, then we will have to rename it to SARS-CoV-3. I don't think we are there. I think we need more data. But the way this study is reporting, you could actually start inferring. So back here, and one more thing, there is lots of data differences, or the reporting differences coming from South Africa. The reports are different. UK is just in the start of it, and I think UK is a little bit more worried and nervous as well. So they're kind of reacting more. Again, this is a study. This is not coming out of nervousness. This is a study. So here, what they're saying is Omicron is antigenically, that means the antigens in the Omicron, or the mutations that it has done, the result of those mutations, the antigen parts of it now, all of it is antigen. Antigenically, it is more distant from other variants. This is a very important statement. As soon as a variant becomes antigenically very distant to escape the immunity, or to become phenotypically different, that means in its function it becomes so different that clinical outcomes are different, then it can be a new strain within the same class instead of a new variant. So this is on page 4 that they say it is antigenically more distant. Their point of saying that is not to say, okay, let's make it SARS-CoV-3. They are saying it for some other reason. Now, continuing here, they said on page 4, there is a substantial fall in neutralizing antibodies, some failing to neutralize at all, 0. So this is the sera with various variants. So what do we know so far for this variant? And I'm going to go to author's conclusion in a second. We're done with the basic idea of the study here. So far we know that the T cell response is still 80% preserved. I actually saw a study today, I believe it was in Discord, which said that T cell response is actually lower. Anyways, there is also a study from Pfizer. They said T cell response is good, so the Pfizer vaccine would still be efficacious. So I think we would still have to figure out what is the truth in there, or what is the reality. And how would we know the reality? As more and more studies repeat the verification of this, then they would start moving in the right direction. And whatever is the more prevalence of the information we see would be the truth. Now, severe COVID and deaths are less so far, and authors agree with that as well. Again, with this study, they are not able to say that this would cause more severe disease or this would cause more deaths. So they said that in their paper, that the impact on the severity of the disease is unknown. I think they should have said, so far the impact seems to be milder. And they have said that in one of the sentences as well, instead of just unknown. This is more concerning to me. Long COVID is still unknown. We do not know what happens in terms of long COVID. And then Omicron continues to displace Delta, or they phrased it differently, saying that it will displace Delta. And UK's technical briefing and UK's other briefing coming from the UK government, I think they were saying that by mid-December, which is almost here, 50% of the cases will be Delta. So I would discuss that separately. The point they're making is Omicron would continue to displace. This is some of the cool beans who've been watching my videos. They have been challenging me back and saying, no, it will not take over. It would coexist with Delta, or Delta would continue to be there as well, while Omicron may not be able to take over, or there is no data to say it would take over, and so on. So far, every geography is showing that Delta is Omicron is taking over. We'll see with more data. So now these are all further thoughts from the authors, and I have the page number there. So what they said was the following, which is interesting. Now consider this. Consider this, that they are saying AstraZeneca below neutralization or detectable titers. Does that not mean that AstraZeneca is almost useless? BioNTech, 29 times reduction. And they said in some cases, zero neutralization. That also means that it is really not that great of a solution then. If that is the case, then this will make sense that new vaccines may be needed. Meaning, they're saying, authors are saying, create vaccines for Omicron. That also, for me, is an indicator that this is SARS-CoV-3 instead of SARS-CoV-2. If you take, I'm staying within the structure of the study. They also said, this is very interesting, if you create a vaccine for Omicron, then be aware that it is unlikely, the vaccine is going to be unlikely to help against the previous variants because they're so different. I don't think that that is where we are, because the difference still is 0.1%. However, if we keep adding towards the spike protein, then maybe there is an issue. So again, we'll have to see. The authors are saying we'll have to make a new vaccine, and that vaccine, when it is targeted at Omicron, then it will not be able to target the previous variants because it would be substantially different, the vaccine. Then they say a multivalent formulation may be considered. This is where, remember in the past when Delta started, Moderna came out and they said, we will make a cocktail which would address both the previous variant and this, and they never came up with a cocktail. Just like now, everybody is saying Pfizer, Moderna, we will, by March, we will come up with the vaccine for Omicron. I do not know if they would really come up with that or not. We'll see Omicron becoming more clear by that time. But anyways, authors are saying you may need a multivalent vaccine. That means continue to have this vaccine plus add the messenger RNA or adenovirus with the DNA for the Omicron as well. Then they say, now here is what is interesting part. They're saying get boosters to have high titers against previous variants. And I would read it to you so that you don't think it's just me making it up. It will help against Omicron. They just proved with their study that the titers are almost negligible. Then they turned around and they said, well, go get your boosters, because that would ramp up your immune system, and a higher titer, although it will be against the previous variant, would still help against the Omicron. So there is a balancing that has to be done. I think there would have to be some reviewing and the commenting on this part of the conclusions, but this is their conclusion or their discussion. This is on page 5. I'll show it to you. Then they say, reach unvaccinated with current vaccines. Once again, you just proved that vaccines are not working very well. Then you also are saying, take the unvaccinated folks and just give them this vaccine. I actually think that the vaccine for Delta, for other variants, is important. So one can say that, hey, Delta is still the dominant one and it is still the scary one and it can still cause damage, so the vaccines are important. But this is what is interesting for me to note, that on one end, the authors are saying neutralization is below detectable state. And then they're saying, well, if you have taken the vaccine, then please go take a booster. And I understand booster would ramp up the immune system. And if you're not vaccinated, then go take the vaccine against the current variants. Then they say the disease severity is unknown. Agreed. Then they say, this is a very interesting part, cellular immunity likely not as impacted. How did they know? They didn't do any test. Anyways, they said it. This is on page 4. Cellular immunity, I think I missed the word likely over here. We'll go and read exactly what they said. Not as impacted. So because of they making that statement, they are then saying likely protection from hospitalization is still there, the current vaccines. This was the statement that came out of Pfizer as well. Pfizer said, and I presented it. Pfizer said, we believe that the T cell responses and cytotoxic responses would still be 80% intact. Because of that, we believe that the efficacy against severe disease and hospitalization is there. This is the same exact statement. The question is, in this study, there is actually no proof of this statement. This is a conjecture from the authors, which is interesting for me, that they are on one end saying, hey, the vaccines are really not working. And on the other end, they're saying, well, this is going to work against severe and hospitalization, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I'm not saying this should not happen. I am on the side of Omicron being mild and just goes away. And this becomes a cold-like thing and we are done. And we handle it as a cold. But still, this is not part of the proof of the study. This is just a statement. And they say number of cases will increase, which I agree with. And they say because of that, even the severity is not there. Still, when you have a lot of people becoming sick and coming to hospitals just even for checkups, they are going to stretch the healthcare resources, and that itself can be damaging. Then they say impact of a third dose is unknown. This is on page 4. However, it is expected to raise neutralization titers. There are multiple, in their discussion, there are multiple points which kind of, I don't know if I want to say contradict, but they do not synchronize with each other. I want to now, this is it, 23 minutes, we're into it, we're done. I want to at least go over these few of these statements for us to look at them. So please give me your time, a little more of your time. So here I'm going to go to page number 4. So here so they say South Africa suggests Omicron is highly transmissible in a population where 60 to 80% already show serological evidence of previous infection or vaccination. This is very interesting. I did not know this. I thought that South Africa's vaccination status is 25 to 28%. Some folks say 35%. And I did not know that the remaining up to 80% of the population, including this 35 and then another whatever number that is, 45, 35 and 35, 70, 45. Another 45% are naturally acquired immune protected. I did not know that. So anyways, they say that is there. And they then use this statement to say, if in South Africa with 60 to 80% protection, they still are getting cases and this high number of cases, then this is going to happen everywhere. I still do not understand this statement, 60 to 80%. So that may be me being not fully aware of it. Then look at this. Page 5. Live virus neutralization titers against Omicron are compared. So here I'm going to read a couple of things. One is neutralizing titers on sera from participants who had received homologous AstraZeneca dropped to below the detectable threshold in all but one participant. In all, except one. Median neutralizing titers on sera from participants who had received homologous Pfizer BioNTech, dropped 29.8-fold from 1609 to 54, with one participant dropping below the detectable threshold. In most cases, in the samples that failed to neutralize with this, some residual neutralizing activity was detected. They used this some residual neutralizing activity was detected to build the remaining part of their argument to say, well, because there is some neutralization, take the vaccine and take the booster, it would give you some protection. But really, they do not know what protection. In summary, there was a substantial fall in neutralization titers in recipients of both homologous AstraZeneca and BioNTech primary course, with evidence of some recipients failing to neutralize at all. These data suggest Omicron is more antigenically distant. I want to read this. The impact on disease severity, this is the blue one. The impact on disease severity is currently unknown, but other aspects of the immune system, such as non neutralizing antibody and cellular immunity, are not expected to be as severely impacted and may confer a degree of protection against hospitalization and severe diseases. So, if the spike protein is changed, then it is possible. And if the vaccine is used to train our immune system, then the only part, even if the vaccine's training fails, the only part of our immune system that would continue to work successfully will be the innate arm. The acquired arm's cytotoxic cells also need binding as T cell receptors, and they also have variable regions to bind just like antibodies have. So I don't understand why we continue to, we, the medical community, the vaccine folks, I am putting myself in that group as well, to not say I'm just criticizing them. I do not know why we continue to come up and say antibodies have failed, but cells would be functional. Innate arm will work, that is understandable. Um, Acute phase proteins will work, complement system will work, that all will work. However, if there is so much of a change in the virus's spike protein that vaccine generated antibodies binding regions cannot bind anymore, then T cell receptors binding regions would also have a problem. But anyways, this is what they are saying. So I wanted you to look at what they're saying instead of me showing you my writing. However, it should be noted that the highest transmission will inevitably lead to increased number of cases. Then they say the impact of the third dose vaccine is currently unknown, but may be expected to raise neutralization titers against the new variant. They are kind of right in both parts of the statement. Currently unknown, yes. Can it raise the titers? It would raise the antibody production. It would bring the immune system back to the ramped up state. Now, would that neutralize? If I look at this study and say neutralization didn't work, then the only way authors are saying is then bring the level so high that there is some neutralization, there is some help. So sure. The immune escape reported here may lead Omicron to displace Delta to become the dominant strain worldwide. And this is where I wanted those folks to look at this as well, who have been asking me to stop saying that this is taking over. So here is another set of researchers who are saying this is happening. And I think we're looking at that in the societies as well, in various communities too. So, anyways, then they continue, and I have shown you the data. This is interesting as well. So, if you look at this side, is the Oxford AstraZeneca, and kind of the color choice is interesting. These are the boxes. So this is one box. It's difficult to make it out in these similar colors everywhere. This is one box, and this is 133. This is another box, and this is another box. And these are, lower range, upper range, and the mean. And similarly here. So if you see here, this is Victoria variant and its behavior with the serum. This is Delta variant, Beta variant. This is Delta variant somewhere over here. And this is Omicron, which is almost, it does not exist. And I think they made it separately over here because over here you cannot even make it out. And this is the data they show. Similarly, if you go for I believe this is the Pfizer BioNTech. Once again, if you see, Omicron has dropped in efficacy or titers compared to others. They are using this to say this variant is very, very different. So that's it. I'm going to stop here. Tell me, what do you think about this? How do you feel that this is doing? I am going to come back and I want to look at some of the UK's data as well, and we'll do some chit chat too. If you give me more time, I would actually prepare the UK's technical brief as well. So we'll talk in the chit chat. So please like, subscribe, and share. And if you like this work, please support it as well. There are 3 links in the description. You can buy me a coffee, or you can become a patron, or you can use PayPal. So thank you very much, and stay safe, happy, and healthy. I want to make sure that we are clear. This study is a preprint. It's a small study. It is a beginning. It's a good study. I don't think it has sufficient proofs in it or tests in it to be able to say one way or the other. Okay, cool. So I'll see you in a few minutes.